What's going on, everybody? We are live. Surprise live edition is what I like to say. Surprise live. Brian, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, surprise live. I didn't know we were doing this live, so I'll make sure to keep the language clean, keep my finger on the mute button just in case. And I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I always ask. So Brian, you're in Florida, right?
Yes, based out of Tampa.
So so I always ask Dan this, so I got to ask you this. So what's the weather like in Tampa today?
The weather in Tampa today, I haven't been outside since 7:30. It was in the mid 60s. It was beautiful. It's been really nice these last few weeks. Waking up in the 50s and 60s, afternoons in the 70s, bright and sunny. Went out on my dad's boat last weekend. It was just beautiful weather, not too hot. It's kind of hitting, it's almost like we're getting the fall weather that we never had this year, because we went straight from summer to our 1 week of winter. So now we're catching up on fall, and not in hurricane season, which it makes it even better.
I love that. Well, everybody who's tuning in, add us comments, let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you. Brian would love to hear from you. And so since we are already a little late, I want to go ahead and dive in. Again, sorry about being late. We're waiting on our third unicorn, Jake, who is having computer issues today. So let's go ahead and dive in. Brian, we brought you on to talk about this innovation summit, right? And I think it's fascinating because you saw a need, and then you created something out of nothing. And from what Dan has said, it was a huge success. And so I guess first off, you want to give a 30-second bio about yourself, and then we can go ahead and start talking about kind of what you've done down in Florida.
Yeah. So my background is in nothing having to do with what I do now. I'm actually an aerospace engineer by background.
Okay.
So if I drop a line saying something's not rocket science, I would know, because I am a rocket scientist. I went to the University of Michigan. I'm from Tampa originally. I moved out to California for a couple of years and then moved back to Tampa in 2009. I've worked through a couple of different industries, from defense technology and big data, and got really tired of large company culture. And that's just me personally. It's just not for everybody. Always kind of knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and in 2013 launched my first company. It was an absolute pitiful disaster, and an amazing failure. I love talking about it because I learned so many lessons.
Dude, our live show yesterday was about failing.
It's important. It's such an important part of going through this path and this journey, because sometimes when you try something for the first time and you have no clue what you're doing, you're not going to do everything perfectly. There's this thought process, and I was guilty of this thought process of, I'm going to build an app and become a billionaire. And it's just that easy. And it's not. It's really hard. For however great they make this out on TV shows and in movies and everything, and you hear all these great success stories, entrepreneurship and being a CEO is so freaking hard. I recommend it to everybody, though, because everybody can do it. Everybody's capable of it if you're willing to go through those hardships and go through the failures and be able to learn from it. And that's what I did, and spun that company into a successful company, which then spun into some other small things. They never really took off in terms of success to the level that I wanted to get to, though. And in 2016, I started researching some of the reasons why, and looked into the market as to why was Tampa Bay, or the state of Florida, not ripe for innovation and entrepreneurship and technology. And that helped me meet a couple of cool business partners. One of them I met just complete luck at a 4th of July barbecue. We were talking over grilling burgers and drinking some beers. And we discovered we were both doing the exact same research at the exact same time with the exact same conclusions. And a 30-minute meeting turned into 2 hours on a whiteboard where we really mapped out the future of what Synapse would be.
So I have a question for you, Brian, and I want to talk about the failure piece because it's so funny, right? I mean, I'm telling you, like we had like a 30-minute live yesterday about failure, and here you are talking about a failure you've had and you have pivoted it to a success. And before I ask this question, I want to give some shout out to Amy. Thank you for tuning in from Memphis. Redline Joe's, Dan, Joseph Young here.
Joseph Young, great dude.
Michael Foss, what's going on, Wake Forest? I love Wake Forest. It's awesome. And Julio from Houston, what's up, buddy? So Brian, so what are some key things that you learned in your failure, right? So I want to give some tangible, because the people who are watching this are in tech, maybe starting their career, experiencing some failures, entrepreneurs who are trying to do startups. So we've had a bunch of startup individuals who have had huge failures. What are some key things that you have learned from a failure perspective? And then the second question is, how did you flip those? How did you focus on that for your next successful program?
Yeah, those are great questions. And hi to everybody who's tuning in as well. Seeing a lot in North Carolina, Memphis. One of my hobbies that really turned into more of I'll call it a habit during quarantine was barbecue, and not just like normal backyard barbecue, but briskets and pulled pork.
Another question, Brian. Another question. I gotta interrupt you. What's your favorite style of barbecue?
Texas style brisket, just salt and pepper, put it on the smoker for 14 hours, and make it just really nice and juicy.
South Carolina barbecue, which is mustard based, the most superior barbecue out there. Don't at me. And it's different than North Carolina barbecue.
Yeah, that's fake news.
It's very different.
The correct answer is Kansas City barbecue.
I like Kansas City as well. Burn ends are a specialty as well. I love doing burn ends. So Kansas City got that one. So now going back to the failures and the times I overcooked the meat. Now, one of the key things that I learned very quickly, I was a solo founder, solo team member. I was completely by myself. And I had a person who's a friend. We went out to lunch. And he looked at me and he said, all right, draw out your org chart. Like, what do you mean? It's me. He goes, no, like draw boxes here. Put the CEO on top and the next wave below. What would you have reporting to you? And you said a COO, a chief operating officer, a technology officer, a marketing officer, revenue officer, financial officer. I said, great. That's kind of a normal business org chart. Put your initials in each one of the boxes that you're doing. And I put my initials in each box. He said, do you see a problem with this? No, we're starting this. It's a startup because are you as good at marketing as you are at operations? Are you as good at technology as you are at finance? And that was a big aha moment of you need a really good supporting cast, and you need a really good, and it's not even just a supporting cast, it's a leading cast to help you out and to help build something together. And you need to trust and you need to enable people to do their jobs really well. Companies that have a solo founder that kind of act on that lone genius mentality of it's my way or the highway, you will often see them go up in flames because people will not follow. And if you don't have people following, and you need people to follow because they're working for equity and sweat equity and points versus working for dollars, their motivation is just gone. And B, you're not getting the best of the best outbound. And that's why you see a lot of times companies, they're launched with a technical founder and a business founder. You have someone who's kind of playing that CTO, COO role versus somebody who's playing the CFO, maybe chief marketing officer, chief revenue officer, somebody who can evangelize, and how that actually works. And then how, when you start putting more people in on the team, how do they fit in? What's important? And how do you let them do their thing versus micromanaging and being on top of everybody all the time? The other thing that I learned that was really important early on was storytelling. And storytelling is a very critical path. And whether it's going ahead, I wasn't sure if you were trying to chime in or you're talking to Jake who joined in, or just saying it's huge. All of the above.
Welcome, Jake. And also, yes, I think storytelling's huge. Huge in every aspect.
Yeah. But not just being able to tell the story, but in a compelling way. Talking about the problem and understanding what it's like to solve a problem. talking about who the hero of the story is. If you follow if you follow almost every single movie line, and I'm sorry to every listener because you are about to have every movie ever written pretty much ruined for you, whether it's Star Wars or The Hunger Games. It's you have a hero, they have a problem. It's both an external and an internal problem. So they might have an enemy, but they're also trying to get over themselves. So if you think of James Bond always has an enemy, but James Bond is always trying to get over the fact that he's probably too old to be going through this on his own. Going into the Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen, she has all the external enemies around her, but she's trying to overcome this fact that she is inefficient in this world coming from the district that she's in. They meet a guide, somebody who can help them along their way. They give them a path, but they don't actually walk them down that path. They just give them what that opportunity may be, and they go down the path to help accelerate success and avoid failure. And that is almost
internal and external antagonist.
Exactly.
Right. Like if you look at The Lion King with Simba, right?
Exactly.
You feel good enough. His dad dies,
Lion
he goes
King's
to
great.
Pumbaa, leads him right in. If you look at Lion King, like you said, Brian, if you look at Lion King's like storyline, you could literally plug it into nearly every single movie. And obviously Lion King's just the example I'm using. You can probably go back to like the 30s and 40s to find that movie and where it fits in. But I love using the Lion King example because I ran on everybody's parade like with Frozen.
Yep.
I bet when you woke up this morning, viewers, that you didn't expect to talk about barbecue and Lion King. But here we are.
I mean, that was my goal, so I get that.
Check that box, Jake. You're good. You've had a full day. Yeah. You're done. Just go to bed. It's all downhill from here. But I never would have thought about that. I would have thought, hey, cool product, take it. You want this. Versus you have this problem. This product is going to help you solve this problem. And that being able to say that in a very compelling way can make a very big difference. And the last thing is, like I said, talking about a problem is actually solving a problem. So many people launch a business because they think it'll be fun or they think it'll be cool, but it's not solving a real world problem. And every now and then, one of them is successful. And that's when you hear the term unicorn, every now and then, but a unicorn doesn't actually exist. Though so many of the unicorns, so many of the billion-dollar privately owned companies are because they're solving a true problem, oftentimes for a business-to-business mentality. It's not just the Facebooks of the world, or now Cameo, which is one of the most recent ones that it has gotten there. Yeah. And I've gotten to know the CEO of Cameo, Stephen Galanis, pretty well over the last few months. He's a really good guy, really sharp guy. But he did smart things. He relied on a team. He's been around the block. Say that again?
You tell him that you were available for his platform.
Exactly. $200. And I'm happy to do a quick video. And so that's one, but so many times the successful businesses are solving a true problem, and they're making it easier and saving time or saving money and enabling companies or people to live their lives better.
You're so right on that. I mean, it's really interesting to see, because we do, consulting and transformation services and updates and things like that. So many companies that we'll go into have had incredible amounts of revenue and success, even with terrible technology or terrible process, because the actual product or the problem they were solving just carried we were at the right place at the right time. We solved the right problem. And now that the competitors have caught up or things like that, now they're realizing, okay, now we got to be more efficient, or now we have to, pivot, or we need to add new features or add new product lines or whatever it may be. But yeah, the ones that figured out and just go, I have 3 kids, so I'm going to also reference in a bunch of kids movies here, but there's a movie, I can't remember what it's called now, but it's whatever the robot movie, and their mantra over and over again is see a need, fill a need, right? And that's how their inventor's mantra they do over and over again. And it's exactly right. I mean, there's tons around there. How are you going to solve it?
Yeah, and so those, if you can find that problem, if you can tell a story and you can build a strong team around you, you are very much set up for success.
Yeah. Jake, I think the movie you're referring to about robots is actually just called Robots.
It's just called Robots, right? Okay, I was
I think
like,
it's just called Robots. So Brian, I want to ask you, you mentioned solving real world problems, and I want to get into what you guys have been able to do with Synapse. And, quick plug, I feel like I hear this on NPR a lot. We've sponsored as VACO the Synapse conference. So for disclosure, right. But Brian, I want to tell you a little bit I want you to tell us a little bit about, I know you said you sat down, you came up with an idea, you whiteboarded over a 2-hour session. But whiteboarding doesn't get you to a point where you're like, okay, well, let's get started. Talk to us a little bit about how you get started. Like, I talk to companies about, all right, well, what was the first line of code you wrote? Or what was the first decision that you made? What was the first thing that transitioned from a whiteboard to actually creating what is now the largest innovation conference in the state of Florida?
So really, and actually, Dan, you may be a little surprised by this. The conference was never a part of the initial model.
Okay.
We weren't even thinking about a conference in any way, shape, or form. A lot of it was just opportunistic and timing. The original premise and what we were going towards was solving the fact that in Florida, innovation in Florida is hard because it's so disconnected, it's so disorganized, and nobody's talking about the good things that are happening. And so the connection, organization, and celebration, really by doing those things, could help solve the problems. And we had initially frameworked this as a web platform. And so we thought if we had some type of compelling web platform, and we were learning from best practices all over the world, from Tel Aviv to London to New York to Chicago to San Francisco, and even Cincinnati, more emerging markets, Boulder, Austin, we could really leverage what was going on and find ways to help connect the region, the Tampa Bay region, and the state of Florida all together and help people find what they need and share what they have in easy and compelling ways. And so we were thinking about that and how to actually make that work and how to enact that through a lot of 2016 and even into early 2017 while this research was ongoing. And finally, in May of 2017, we went to a small conference and announced that we were doing this. And all of a sudden, some people said, this is something we need. I see how we would use this. We want to help. And they started helping us put what a UX together would be of this platform. And we were going down that path. And through 2017, finally, July 2017, I left my last, I'll call it day job and what was making money there to really focus in on this full time. And we started building out this platform. And then in probably about September of 2017, we had met with some people with the Business Journal who had run events, and they had run in early 2017 an Innovation Summit. And they had put on an event alongside Florida Funders, and they just said, we can't do this an event like this. We know you like this. We know you want it. If you want it, it's yours. And we just said, great, we're going to take this and let's see what happens. And so we decided that we were going to try this out and just try. And as we're building this platform, we're now doing two big things. We're building this web platform, and simultaneously, we're trying to plan this first innovation summit. And I'm trying to run the show and project manage this, and knowing the largest event that I'd ever put on in my life was probably my kid's birthday party of like 30, 40 people. And all of a sudden now we're trying to put on a conference for maybe 1,000 people. We're hopeful 1,000 people show up. And then we had a couple of things fall in our favor. We were originally going to do some things at different venues. We looked at Amalie Arena to do a party outside, and all of a sudden we said, why don't we just do it here? Then we reached out and we talked to Jeff Vinnick, and he said, yeah, showcase it, do it here. It could be cool. And then we just started throwing out different crazy ideas of fun stuff that we could do. And people just kept saying, yes, that's cool, do it. Let's give tables to startups versus trying to charge a bunch of startups and early stage companies tables. So this way they can showcase their innovations and people can see the cool stuff ongoing. Cool. Let's do small stages so people can showcase demos. Awesome. Let's put a big stage right down on the floor. And instead of having a video board, the first year we dropped the scoreboard down and we used the giant scoreboard at Amalie Arena as the video board. Wow, that's like, it's already there. And all of this together and all of this combined just made something that had this coolness factor and this buzz factor that as we hope to have 100 exhibitors and 1,000 people, we had 257 exhibitors, about 3,300 people show up over the course of 2 days, and some amazing sessions, some great learnings. And all of a sudden it was something that built energy and excitement that we could expand upon and make it grow between 2018 and 2020. The first one was March 2018, and then we held in February 2020 the last party in town before COVID and shutdown.
Yeah,
we had 7,000 plus people over the course of 2 days. Headlined by Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, who is a very innovative, great businesswoman, self-made billionaire, and really just drew an amazing crowd and a lot of energy. And then we hosted our conference virtually this year, just dealing with the shutdown and taking advantage of the opportunities to keep people connected and keep people celebrated and keep people engaged, and help people discover potential opportunities. We had Damon John from Shark Tank and Steve Young and Jerry Rice, 49ers legends who were doing things in the esports space. Jeff Hoffman from Priceline. We had people from all over the country paying attention. Just a really cool way to keep the community engaged and keep everybody socially connected while physically distant.
Yeah. Our CEO says 6 feet apart, but closer than ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been using the physically distant, but socially connected. Nice. We really are. We know people better than ever. We've been in people's homes distantly through Zoom. We've met people's kids. We've seen their dogs. We know what their home offices or their bedrooms look like. And it's a little weird, but it's a lot more connected than ever before.
Brian, how did you go about when you're creating this? I know you worked with the Business Journal and they kind of pass this on, but like innovation is a broad topic, right? And not only are you guys talking about just innovation, like having been to the conference, there's discussion about blockchain. You guys were one of the first like conferences that I've heard of that really like embraced blockchain, embraced like what that world might be. There was discussion about AI. There was also, startups and everything else. How did you guys like start to trim down what that potential audience might be? Because it's so broad, right? And you don't want to be everything to everybody or you're nothing to nobody, right?
Yeah, and that's been one of the hardest things that we've done, and we've even done a better job of that over the last few years. Because when we started, I'm remembering a whiteboard session where we were just writing down topics to make sure we covered it all. And one of my partners, we wanted to talk about robotics, and his response was, "Yeah, we need a session. Robots are cool." And it's become a non-running joke that robots are cool. So going back to the robot movie now, we now know why it was has stuck with you, Jake, because robots are cool.
Right.
Innovation is a term that expands beyond technology. And that is something that we want to celebrate. And especially if you think across Florida and Florida innovation, Florida has been a leader in culinary and restaurant innovation. They've been a leader in hospitality innovation. Florida's been a leader in so many innovative aspects of the world that most people don't know about. One of the first commercial uses of an autonomous vehicle was in Tampa, at Tampa Airport with their monorail system. Publix, a grocery store, uses one of the world's largest AI-enabled logistics chains to help manage $35 billion worth of product. I think Amazon has probably beat them out now by a large margin, but what they have been doing was very innovative in their time. We try to think of these things and clump them together as to what are the leading industries and who's really driving the show. And blockchain really fills in a number of places. And we weren't having blockchain just for the sake of blockchain, but how does it relate to financial tech? And that's so big in Miami and Tampa. How does it relate to healthcare, which is massive between Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, and all of these different enabling technologies, and how do they build into a bigger picture? This year, we really focused on 8 core topics: healthcare innovation, defense, cybersecurity, community impact, investing, media and entertainment, green technology, clean technology, and I'm forgetting the 8th off the top of my head, but all just, really meaningful emerging technologies, all really meaningful as to what people are doing and looking at the data of what people are doing across the state of Florida and how it matters to help people feel like they're a part of this community.
So, Brian, Jake, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just I want to know, just from an infrastructure perspective, like how many people does it take on your team to like keep that community going virtually and when you were in person, just keep the spark alive, and like what does touch points look like and cadence around that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question, because most people, when we explain what we do, think that we would probably have a staff of 30 to 40. We're 5 full-time.
Wow.
And it is absolutely astonishing. My hat goes off to these team members day in and day out. We have contractors that supplant, so we have a handful. I think this year we had probably 3 or 4. Past years we might have 5 to 10 that join us. We get interns and volunteers, but people just love this. They love supporting the community so much, and we find ways to be effective. It's about working smart and not hard, and making sure the right people are doing the right things. So a lot of these lessons that have been learned about team building and problem solving, they all go to this to make sure that what we can do, what we can build, what we can grow, it is done in an effective manner, and we're not just all over the place.
Yeah, so that purpose-filled organization of what you're trying to get painting that vision is so important, keeping people knowing the true north on that. We have a conference here in Raleigh called All Things Open, and that started, I think, probably 5 years ago. And this last one before everything shut down, that was end of 2019, was about 6,500 people as well, for all open source tech. That's like the goal. Mm-hmm. What they do, right? But the volunteers aspect for people that catch the vision, and I'm sure you experience that over and over again. It's really cool. People want to be a part of something bigger, than themselves and part of the community. And if you can create that environment to where they can have that community, they can accomplish great things, right? And then of course the conference can as well. So in the community. So yeah, that's fantastic. What's kind of next for you guys? What's on the horizon?
A deep breath and a glass of bourbon. We just had our conference in March 8th through 11th, doing it in the virtual side. There's a lot of cool opportunities and ways to make it good and compelling. A lot of people I'm seeing in the virtual space are missing the mark. They're trying to do a virtual event in the same way, or make it as live and realistic as if it's in real life as possible, versus embracing the strengths of the virtual and realizing there's some limitations in the real world space. And so we really thought about it in that way of how do we just embrace all the good sides of this. And now we're thinking about what's next, and thinking about people are starting to get back together in person. We were talking before we kicked this off about vaccinations and who's gotten their shots, and I'm fully vaccinated at this point. And there's a lot of people who are there. And so people are itching to get back together. There's also a lot of people who are saying, this was really nice. I don't need to be out in person when I don't have to be. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with it for whatever reason you have. If you don't feel safe, if you might be more introverted versus extroverted, if you like the comfort of your own home office chair, you like the fact that your own coffee is 10 feet away from you.
That right there.
Really the coffee. That's the only reason.
Listen.
It's because Nashville has terrible coffee shops, Taylor. I get it.
I didn't have you at bourbon, but I had you at coffee.
You did. I'm more of a wine coffee guy.
I mean, I bring bourbon to the office. I don't know what y'all are messing with.
Well, we got a bottle right over there. It's right outside my door. We keep the decanter.
All right, so Brian, real quick, favorite bourbon you've had recently?
I'm giving her a new recommendation after this. Go, Brian.
Chestnut Farms is it's one I found at Total Wine. They were trying to pump it out and say, hey, like, try this. And I was like, all right, sure, fine. I'll buy a bottle. and absolutely loved it. It was nice. It was smooth. I love finding things that are just, completely out of left field. And trying something new. And if you want to say new favorite, that one's going to go up there.
Have you tried Basil Hayden's Dark Rye? It's sherry casket aged.
I have not tried that one.
Yeah, we've got like a bunch of that. We accidentally bought it at some point, and now we've got like 8 bottles at the office. There's only 4 of us that actually go into the office, so if that tells you anything, it's like a 100-person office.
Jake says that.
I always have a bottle of Basil Hayden at home, so that's I know the regular quite well.
Yeah. Hey, so this is a good question from Michael, coming off of the bourbon conversation. Do you see more hybrid conferences coming? And I'm curious too, Michael, if you want to expound on what you think is hybrid. And I'm curious what we all think is hybrid, because I think the word hybrid is going to start being used a ton, and I'm kind of curious with conferences. Brian, what do you see as hybrid?
Yeah, so we're looking into this right now, and I would define hybrid as having components that are in person while also having components that are remote. So you have the choice as a ticket purchaser, or maybe as an exhibitor, or maybe as an attendee of some sort, to either attend in person or stay at home and watch it on your computer. I absolutely see those coming. I think that people liked it. I think people liked being able to do it. You can see some aspects of it, but you don't quite get the same energy. And the way that I equate this, and the best thing that I have been able to say as to what makes it feel or similar way and good production value, is a sporting event. In a sporting event, you can go to in person or you can watch on TV. And it's hybrid. It's done very differently. And it's a very different experience depending on what you are or where you are. If you're in person, you got the crowd around you, you got the smells, you got $20 beers, you got the scoreboard and the PA announcer and the referees, and you hear certain things that are very different. Yeah. And when you're at home, you have statistics and instant replays and different announcers who are really providing more color to each play and more analysis to each play, and different commercials that are taking place. So you're paying for the ticket to be there and to pay for the energy and the excitement and to be a part of the moment. Or you can stay home and watch for your cable subscription or your streaming subscription, or however you're stealing it illegally, depending on who you are, to watch something in a different experience, but can be a little bit more convenient and is shown at more volume. It's limited the number of people who can go in person.
So we actually we built a platform last year for some very, very large award shows that were a mix of hybrid event streaming. And it was, you had to have everyone coming from their own spaces. And then we had these giant walls of screens that you could be a part of and kind of have this both experience. And what birthed out of that is that we're actually going to be launching a dev tool that allows you to create this in Unreal Engine. You can create a live stream into a virtual environment, right? So, and that's the tool. We'll have that launched the next like.
We'll use it obviously with Unicorn Finders as well.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yeah, we'll use it in Unicorn Finders for sure. It's basically the closest that we can get to Star Wars, where I can get a hologram up there on the desk. That's what I'm going for.
Well, if you go to Disney, you can always get involved in Star Wars. I saw Tom Brady was there and was trash talking Kylo Ren a couple of days ago. So that's very deserved. Tom Brady definitely was a big part of that. I do want to, and a part of the excitement of Tampa this past year. Michael has an interesting comment, and just to bring this up about the hallway tracks or the hallway talks. Absolutely, like that's who you bump into. Introductions is half the reason people go to a conference, is kind of be seen. We utilized a software called Brella, and actually Nashville, their big conference 3686, we learned it from them because they had used it. If you've never heard of it, you should. It's a really good one. It's done by Launch Tennessee. It's all about entrepreneurship. And it's an AI-enabled networking platform. So instead of bumping into people in the halls, because you're not going to have that, it says you should meet this person because you have similar interests or you are looking to do the same things. And so that's when I talk about, you can't recreate it. You're never going to have a hallway. You're never going to have that virtual hallway. But how do you live in the virtual space and build on the opportunities? That's what you can do.
Brian, I want to talk to you a little bit about now this idea of virtual conferencing and the hybrid conferencing. So now you can not only target, Florida, and I know that you guys did a good job of bringing in investors and people from New York and Atlanta and folks like that I met. But now all of a sudden, if you can do this hybrid conference, you have the ability to reach out to folks in California or Texas or other areas, right? Where Synapse before was about, or still is, about fostering innovation in the state of Florida. But now all of a sudden you have the ability to reach out to other areas. How do you guys go about marketing that and competing against conferences all over, theoretically, the world now to try to convince folks that Synapse is a place that you can go and you can learn, and this is worth your couple $100 or whatever it might be.
And your time.
Yeah. The time is the biggest competition. It's convincing somebody that it is worth their time to spend an hour or a couple hours or a couple of days to be a part of this. And that's where kind of that hybrid opportunity comes in. And especially by doing it in that way, the virtual tickets this year for general admission were free. And we also learned very rapidly that people's attention spans are short. So it's
yes.
Yeah, I know. I'm staring off into space myself.
Yeah, I mean, I've caught myself in this like squirrel.
Yep.
You got squirrels in your house. I'd be looking over there too.
Taylor, if you have a squirrel in your house, you need to go get it now. But
yeah, we're fine if you got a job, dude.
What's that in your background? And if you put a squirrel in a virtual background, that's pretty impressive. It's people's attention spans are short, and we live in this streaming world where people want to watch things at their own time and on their own convenience. So you might not have that, okay, I'm in front of a speaker who's talking now and talking live, but I can get 90% or 80% out of it by listening to it at 5 o'clock at night and a short 15 to 30 minute session, and to be able to do that. And by doing that, we're asking less. We're not asking somebody to commit 2 full days or 3.5 days with travel time. We're asking you to commit a short period of time to get something out of it that you'd want. And then we're going to say, all right, if you like that, commit another half an hour. And then be a part of the networking if you like that, and join and build from there. And that's how we're trying to get people in, is not by asking the world of people. It's by asking little and saying you can build on it from there, and you can customize this to what works best for you.
So Brian, I have a question, and this kind of goes, Dan, Jake, and I are really passionate about branding. One of the reasons why we started Unicorn Finders is because we think branding in the staffing world is pretty terrible. And so we wanted a place where things look good and kind of push that from a marketing perspective. How has your mindset shifted from being all on site to now having a virtual, component from here on out, and being impactful from a marketing and branding perspective now across the country? Because now it's not just a local thing. It's now could be a regional, maybe national thing. So what are your thought processes behind that?
Oh, it's huge. There's a lot of thought. We hired a marketing director. Her first day was actually March 16th of 2020, which was the first day of shutdown. I feel for her entirely. She was supposed to start a little bit earlier, and we had to delay it a little based on her leaving her previous role. But she is such a smart woman when it comes to marketing and awareness and getting outbound. And we have to think about different channels and how to best maximize the investment. So utilizing digital marketplaces, utilizing the services available, Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, Instagram streaming. All of these services that are available in ways that we can outreach to a lot of people at one time to get their attention and to make sure that they can learn from it, and utilize things like Twitter and fleets now, whatever those are. It's trying to find ways to be creative and think differently. And we love to do things where we'll do small pilots and we'll try things out and find what doesn't work really quickly and fail really quickly. And then we're going to find the 1 or 2 or the 3 things that do work and just go all in on them and say, if this is going to work, we're going to make this work in a big way.
I love that.
Brian, what? I just changed my name for those of you that aren't watching. That's what he's
Brian's
chuckling at.
biggest fan.
Brian, what's the future for you guys? I know you've touched on it a little bit. Actually, I take that back. I'm not interested in that question yet because that's the end. How do you go about like choosing speakers, right? Like you've had Sarah Blakely who started Spanx, you've had Damon John, you've had a lot of different people. You've had, you had the mayor of Miami who's doing some great things. You've had all sorts of people. How do you go about identifying and picking the ones that will resonate, and not because it's not always just the biggest name, right? It's who's going to resonate. So how do you guys determine and try to trim down that list? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to get paid X thousands of dollars to speak.
Yeah, and the day that I can become a public speaker and a keynote speaker and charge the amounts of money that some of these keynote speakers charge, and it's not hidden, you can Google it and find out how much they're charging. Not that they get paid that much each time, but
right.
It's stupid amounts of money that people will pay or people will ask for keynote speakers. And I'm talking 5-6 figures at times. And not just below 6 figures, sometimes as well. A lot of it, we start early and we put lists together. We look at the different speaker bureaus. We look at who's on the market. We look at maybe who's recently released a book. And when we start, we dive in, we then get a lot of feedback. We get a lot of feedback on who people like, what are people doing, who's hot, who's upcoming, what opportunities are there, what opportunities are present, and how can we access and make sure we get a good deal. So Sarah Blakely's from the Tampa Bay market originally. She's from Clearwater, actually. Her family still lives here. And we had a connection who knew her parents, and she seemed like very much a no-brainer in terms of could we get her as a self-made woman billionaire at a time when women in innovation is something that needs to be promoted, that needs to be a lot more inclusive. And that was something that really hit in a very big way. And we went through all sorts of back channels and all sorts of asking and got to a point of actually nearly needing to pull the offer and saying like, hey, if we don't hear by like noon tomorrow, we have to go to our backup plan. Like 11:55 the next day, we got an email saying, yes, okay, she's good. We're just going to send back a couple of revisions in the contract. And we popped champagne immediately because we knew that was going to be such a big deal, not just for us, but for the state. It's who do people want to be inspired by, and who can people really get something from in a nice, meaningful way. And that is something that makes a difference. And so that's why we went with Sarah. Damon was awesome in terms of branding and innovation and the challenges that he overcame, and thinking about such a challenging year on so many perspectives. It was really important to have somebody who had overcome some really hard challenges, such as his dyslexia in life, and what he did to really think about branding in such a big and meaningful way. Mayor Suarez of Miami happened to be opportunistic. It was just the right time, and what he's been doing. And if you haven't been following Miami's blowing up in a big way in terms of innovation. And it all started with somebody saying, hey, after this vacation to Miami during the pandemic, I think I want to move my company here. And he posted it on Twitter. Mayor Suarez responded with 4 words: how can I help? And as the mayor of Miami, and who's had a family in politics, that was it. How can I help? On Twitter. And if you look at his Twitter and what's happened since, he's literally had people take screenshots of his tweets and put them up on billboards in San Francisco. It's things like that that can make a difference. Stephen Galanis, the CEO of Cameo, we were really looking to get somebody with an up-and-coming company, a company that might not be where you have Damon John with FUBU and what's already there, and Spanx, which is already there, and made it in a big way. Cameo had not released the fact that they were getting $1 billion valuation yet. They were raising money. I think it was a Series C at the time when we started talking. And it's such a cool concept of a company, and to be able to hear and learn from somebody who ideated in an innovation hub like 1871 in Chicago and built a way that delivers to customers, and he rolls out the red carpet and has some really good stories. And then, oh, by the way, in the pandemic said, I don't want to live in a tiny apartment in Chicago anymore. I'm moving to Miami. And so why Miami instead of California? And what does that mean? And what does Florida mean to him?
Look, I lived in California. You don't want to move there. I lived there for
I lived in LA for a couple of years.
Same.
Where in LA were you? But
I was in Echo Park before it was cool.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I was in Hermosa Beach while it was cool.
While it was cool. Yeah.
And no, I know Echo Park, and I know Echo Park before it was cool as well.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Well, Brian, I want to end this with the question I was going to ask before. Where do you see Synapse going and growing? Fantastic job with transitioning the conference to virtual this year. But where do you see you guys going over the next couple of years?
I see this getting back to be a big thing. I would really like to be able to see this further statewide, and whether it's attracting people from around the state or doing one big thing across the state, and really being that go-to place that when somebody wants to know about innovation in Florida, it's synapsefl.com is where they're going, or they're joining the newsletter, or they're coming to an event, or they're being a member within our organization. We're a small, mighty nonprofit that is really out kicking our coverage in a big way. And we're really excited to continue to bring this and to help build partnerships, to help make connections happen, and to help make innovating easier.
I love it, man. I love
That's
it. Well,
awesome.
Brian, why don't give a quick shout out. I know you just said the website, but give a quick shout out where people can follow you, learn more about Synapse, and just plug away.
You can learn more about Synapse at synapsefl.com. If you want to follow me, request me on LinkedIn, say that, hey, you watch the show. That way you're not one of the million people that just says, hey, we have a bunch of mutual connections. We should connect. Or you can follow me on Twitter at RocketManDK. I can even edit my name since that way you have it there. Because sometimes it's a little long, but an ode back to my rocket scientist days.
There it is.
That's awesome.
Somebody created that handle for me. They actually created a fake Twitter account for me about 10 years ago. And eventually when I said I needed to join it, I didn't want to recreate it on my own. So they just gave me the password and let me take it over. And I never changed
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it. Well, Brian, dude, I appreciate it so much. You've been a great friend, a great business partner. I'm excited to see where you guys continue to grow. Know that we will always be there to support you. And other than that, man, thank you so much. Best of luck with everything that you have going on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you all for having me. Appreciate it.
Great meeting
Thanks,
you,
Brian.
Thanks.